Now, before we can get into completing the square, we have to take a look back at those perfect square trinomials. This is a form that some of you may have memorized, some of you may not when we were factoring, but it's something that's going to be very important as we are going through this process of what's called completing the square. And so I have the rule up here, and it's if you have a binomial squared, rather than writing these next to each other and foiling it out, there's this process that you can do where basically you square the first term, multiply the two terms together and multiply by 2, and then square the last term. And without having to FOIL it out, that's a way of writing what that would equal. What we're going to be doing with completing the square is basically going backwards. So we want to know what value of c, or if you think of it as our b squared, what would let us work backwards and write this as a perfect, as a binomial that's being squared. And so if you look through this formula, basically what you're going to be doing is, in this case I've got x squared plus 18x plus c. I want to know what does c equal, and then from that, what is my binomial that's being squared going to look like? Well, the way you get c is basically working backwards through this. So you got your middle term. I've got to divide it by 2, and then to get c I'm going to square whatever that number is. So 18x divided by 2 is just going to be 9. Now I'm not going to pay attention to the x, that comes from the a, but basically I'm taking that coefficient, dividing by 2, and squaring it. So in this case, c would equal 81. Now the number that goes in my binomial is that 18 divided by 2, or in this case, 9. So if I did x plus 9 quantity squared and expanded it out, I'd have x squared plus 18x plus 81. So I can do the same thing here, even with a minus sign. So when I figure out what c is, I take negative 12, just the coefficient, divide by 2, and square it. So negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Squared, however, is positive 36. Make sure that you have that as positive. Now, as far as my binomial that's being squared, this is where the negative is going to be accounted for, because negative 12 divided by 2 is going to give me minus 6. And if I expanded that out, that's how I would get x squared minus 12x plus 36. Now the last one here is something you are going to run into, the dreaded fractions. So in this case, when I take 7 and divide it by 2 and then square it, it doesn't come out to be a nice integer. Basically 7 divided by 2, I'm going to write it as 7 halves. We're not going to use decimals here. So 7 halves squared, basically you square the numerator and the denominator. So c is 7 halves squared, or 49 over 4. So that's my c. My value that's going to go inside my binomial that's being squared is just going to be 7 divided by 2, or 7 halves. I've got a plus sign here because this was positive 7. And if I had x plus 7 halves quantity squared, and I expanded it, I'd have x squared plus 7x plus 49 fourths.